to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is financial advisor Jodielynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
We are indeed. We have a little bit of a change in plan because we kind of miscommunicated with poor Matthew. So those of you who are expecting to see Matthew Gardan joining us today, we got our signals crossed. So we have rescheduled. We're going to do that show next Tuesday. So you'll be looking for, if you're watching us on social media, just look for the announcements there. Or obviously, if you just listen to the podcast, like most people do, it'll just show up in your feed like it normally does. So we're kind of improvising a little bit, and we were saying, well, why don't we try to do a show anyway? Because the themes that we were planning to talk about with Matthew, and that we will talk about next week, are themes that I think Jody and I can kind of address directly anyway. So it's kind of a warm up. So we've kind of threw the gauntlet down, right, Jody?
Yes, yeah, we're doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. So yeah, so we welcome everybody who wanted to be a participant in this program, this special segment that we do called the Crypto Skeptic. And what we decided to do is we're going to talk about the role that money plays in people's lives and the way that people block themselves on money and the ways that people's attitudes and beliefs about money hold them back, and then ask ourselves and talk about here on the program, can crypto address any of those things?
It's a big topic.
It is. It's a big topic. Well, that's why we need 2 episodes. We'll start off here and then we'll finish it off with Matthew next week, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's good. So let me give you, because Jody, you actually don't know the background of what led to me connecting with Matthew on this. So let me give you that background. And many of the listeners are in the TIA community, so they'll want to know this too. I'm going back about, I don't know, I'm saying a month and a half ago, something like that. It was shortly after I started doing this special segment on LOA Today, this was the Crypto Skeptic. And Matthew published something. Now, Matthew's very big in the TIA community. He was one of the earliest people to take David Strickle's TIA boot camp. He's one of their leading figures and so forth. So he plays a very important role there. And he had posted on his own timeline about concerns that he had about what we call fiat currency and how he thought that crypto would address those. So I won't go into what he talked about. We'll save that for his next visit. But the gist, the kind of the broad feel of what he was talking about is that there are a number of things wrong with the monetary system, and that these things that are wrong actually hold people back, and are perhaps one of the ways that people find themselves blocked by money. Now, this led to a very interesting exchange between him and me and others, and David Strickle saw that and was intrigued by what we were talking about and invited me to come do a show with him on his podcast about the exact same topic. Now, on that show, we were talking about it from the energetic perspective, from the stream perspective, right? What does the stream have to say about these kinds of things? And what do we need to understand about what the stream calls the pyramid? There's this pyramid to understand how people kind of, you know, it's always dangerous to put people into categories. But if you put them in categories, they're like, the people at the top of the pyramid, they're like the multi-billionaires. They have great relationships with money. And the people at the bottom of the pyramid are, you know, dirt poor, living in poverty and so forth, terrible relationship with money, and then everything in between. That's what that pyramid is all about. So we were talking a lot about that on the show. So that kind of gives you like a lay of the land of how this whole thing got started. And so I'm going to get our conversation going here by I'm going to throw something over to you. I'm going to ask you, what's your take on, just take crypto out of the equation for the moment, because you're a money coach. You're a broker, you're a financial person, but you also coach people on money. From your perspective, when you think about the monetary system itself and how people feel about money in their own lives and respond to it and so forth, do you see a connection going on there, or do you really think what people are experiencing about money really has more to do with themselves than it does with the monetary system?
I think it's both, Walt. What I find very intriguing is that most people have no idea how currency is created or how money actually works, including most financial advisors.
Which is odd.
Very odd. But hello, that was me. I had no idea. I had no idea. Literally, Walt, I did not start down the conversation of currency and how it's created and everything like that until just about 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad asked me a question that I couldn't answer. And, leave it up to your parents when you're a financial advisor for your parents. They always ask you like the hardest questions.
Sure, of course. That's what they're there for, right?
Yeah, he was asking me about the dollar and why the Canadian dollar lags behind the US dollar, and like when things are going well here, a lot of times it's not reflected in that that relationship. Like the US seems to like be propped up, and I couldn't answer it. I was like, I don't really know, but I'll find out because I love learning.
Okay.
And then I started to learn more about currency. And what's really intriguing is that when you start to learn about how currency is created and the limitless potential. I know that there's a lot of bad things that can happen with limitless spending or, no budgeting and all of that coming from governments. I get that. But it's interesting because it's limitless in a sense when you stop looking at those things. Like they can print as much as they want. And yet our society truly feels like there's never enough money.
Yeah.
So there's this disconnect between the system and what we've been taught about the system. And we don't even understand how money is actually created, how it's not connected to something of value, a storehouse of value. It's just the government's promise that it's worth something and our belief. And I think that's the start of the distortion with money, is the way that we see it, or we're conditioned to see it, is very different than the way that it can work potentially. So I find that really odd, how it's limitless. And then on the other side, we feel as a society that it's so limited. There's not enough. We don't have enough resources. And it really goes against the grain of everything with the law of attraction and everything about the universe, because the universe is abundant and expansive and all of these things. You have these resources at the tips of your fingers, so to speak. And yet we don't feel that way with this illusionary thing called money. So I'd say it's both.
That's great. I love that. That's a beautiful presentation that you did right there.
Thank you.
To expand on it even a little bit further, you mentioned how many financial people don't know how the monetary system works or how money is created. I'll take it a step further. There are many people who are experts in money, experts in monetary systems, and they can't even agree on how it works.
Yes.
That's the most amazing part about it.
Yes.
Literally, I mean, vastly different theories about how the whole thing works, why inflation gets created, what they can agree that it is created through a system that was generated by a government law in the US that led to a private institution called the Federal Reserve, and that the Fed creates the money. That's about as far as the agreement goes.
Yeah.
From that point on, it's, take your best guess is what the particular expert is going to say next. And
100%.
Part of that is because of the powers that the Fed has taken on for itself since 1913 when it was created. But also it's because of perceptions that people have about what it should be doing. It's all about the should. And in fact, that's why you see these people on TV, there's an inflationary cycle, or there's, the market's down or whatever. And they're jumping on talking about, well, this is what's going on with money. And they don't agree.
Nope.
They never agree.
They don't agree. And it's really interesting. It's kind of like this blame game. I'm just sitting and like witnessing all of this. Like you'll watch different broadcasts, especially right now, because we are experiencing inflation and the stock market is in turmoil and all of these things. And one person will say, it's the fat cats, the big corporations, they're greedy. And I'm not saying that that's not true. I think that that's not the whole story. And then they'll say, it's the government. They print too much money. It's the Federal Reserve. Like everybody's got a different story. And that's been my journey navigating this, is what is actually happening and what is about to happen next.
I also remember when I studied monetary systems pretty extensively long before I studied law of attraction. And I remember my breakthrough moment when I finally grasped the mechanism that is used to create new money when the Fed or any other central bank does it. because what they do is they literally write down on a ledger. Now this is an electronic ledger these days, or even an imaginary ledger. But there is an actual ledger that the Fed keeps. It's not quite what people think it is, but there is a ledger. But they write down on the ledger a debt. They literally issue a debt, and the issuance of the debt takes the form of currency.
Yeah.
So currency is a debt, which is just mind-blowing. The only reason I was able to make sense out of it is I used to work as a bank teller many, many, many years ago. And this is long before the current method. When a bank teller has to finish their day, they always have to balance out, they call it, making sure that the amount of cash they have in their register, or in their drawer rather, matches up to what it should be with all the deposits and withdrawals and all that kind of stuff. But back in the day when I was doing it, you actually had to write up your sheet. You actually had to enter all the information and then total it all up. And when you entered your information, the cash all went on the debit side. And I remember the first time I saw that, I said, well, what's it doing on the debit side? Shouldn't it be over on the credit side?
You'd think it's an asset, but it's not.
It's not. It's a liability.
It's a liability.
And how odd that is. Money is a liability. Well, no wonder we're messed up about it.
Right? Somebody said to me last week, we were talking about credit card debt and stuff like that, and like just misnomers and the public and how we as society treat it. And this gentleman that I was talking to, a great friend of mine, he said, people treat their credit card like they've won the lottery, like it's the lottery. And I said, because it is. It's a debt note here and it's a debt note there. So isn't it quite possibly the same thing? Like, woo, lottery over here, woo, lottery over here. It's kind of the same thing. And I think this is what is so confusing from an energetic perspective, honestly, is that it is a debt. It's a debt note. So we're not taught that understanding. We're taught you have money and your bank account's in a positive. That means good, right. Yeah. But all of those are debt notes. People can't grasp it inside of their head because it's a complex conversation.
It's a very complex conversation, but mainly it's a complex concept. The idea of money being debt. Because we think of money, if we think of debt, that's like, okay, I borrowed against a credit card, or I took out a car loan, took out a mortgage. That's debt, right? And it is. It is debt. Mm-hmm. But the money itself is debt. Even to this day, even as I say that, I do understand it on one level, and on another level, my mind is spinning out of control.
Yes. Yeah, because we're taught so many things about debt. Debt is bad. You're bad if you're in debt, if you have too much, blah, blah, blah. All of these things. Now, imagine unconsciously applying that to a debt note, which is our money. No wonder a lot of people feel bad about money. They don't even recognize this correlation that they may unconsciously be making. Now, I'm not saying all of them are making that, but I think that there's that unconscious wisdom that we have. And maybe that's a part of the story of why so many people struggle with money too.
I think it's probably true. I do know that, like you were saying, and I agreed with your original answer, that it's both. That people have their own issues that have nothing to do with the money themselves. And there's also the monetary system that also creates issues. I think both goes on.
Yeah.
So I think there are really a few conversations we can have here. We can have the conversation of, well, what do we do about that in our own lives? We can have the conversation about, do we not get caught up, allow ourselves to get all caught up? Because most people don't. Most people don't even pay attention to this stuff that we're talking about.
No.
Like, what, debt, money, debt? What are you talking about? I just take the money out of the machine and I go spend it. Come on. That's literally the level that most people think about money, right?
Yeah.
So can we honestly say that they're being messed up in this way about the money? Well, not consciously.
Not consciously. Nope.
No.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
But subconsciously, well,
maybe. Yeah.
And the reason I say is because I have learned since studying law of attraction, the spiritual side of all this stuff over the last 10 years that I've been doing this podcast, we are all connected. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I just finished our regular episode, and I told a story at the beginning about how connected we were and how connected I was to my guest the previous day, who was also connected to former co-host Cindy Chavez, who's connected to me. I mean, the connection was just wild. It was absolutely insane. But it really illustrates we really are connected.
Really connected. And that's a good point. Us being all connected, whether you consciously understand the system or you understand it subconsciously at a deeper level, you're connected to people who both consciously and unconsciously understand it. So their connection is now your connection, and it could be something that's unconsciously happening.
And we
Over and over.
know for a fact, that people we have generational connection issues. We have we have societal connection issues, where people, we just kind of pick up each other's stuff. I mean, just in families, alcoholism, for instance.
Yeah,
it can run rampant in a family, and you can be growing up in that family and not personally have any real tendencies toward alcoholism, but because your family has it, all of a sudden it starts to affect you.
Yeah.
In a big way. And
Absolutely.
there are people who go through therapy for years because of that kind of thing. You know, so these kinds of connections are a big deal. They occur in every aspect of our lives. It's no wonder that money also becomes a part of that conversation.
I actually use this as a teaching tool in my money coaching practice. Yes, because I think it's profound that in our society, the way that we typically operate is we give our power to money. And the way that we do this is, for everyone, it's a little bit different, but we'll say, when I have more money, then I will be happy. I will be joyful. I can be proud of myself. And we connect it to this deeper level of our soul. Like, if I have money, I'm a good person. And if I don't, I am a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that whole thought process, when you start to bring in currency and the fact that it is just, the government says it's worth something, and this is the most important part, it's our belief in it. Our belief. So we're breathing life into money on one hand. It wouldn't exist without us. Right. They couldn't have created it without us. And then, so you are the almighty creator or whatever. You're the powerful being that allowed this to be created, literally created. And then in your everyday life, you're saying, oh, because I don't have that, it means that I'm not good enough. It doesn't make any sense. You got to take your power back, and you choose that you're good enough, not money, because money is just something that you're saying has value. You're the one giving it the value, not it giving value to you. And when you start living your life from that perspective, everything changes.
Well, it does, but it's also an opportunity for confusion.
Yes.
For the exact same reason we just described. And I'll tell you, I was confused for years. That's one of the reasons I studied monetary systems, because none of it made any sense to me.
Yeah.
I would hear all the different theories, all the different explanations about, why is society the way it is? Why does politics work the way it is? Why is economics the way it is? Why is all these different things? And on the surface, in their own little categories, they made sense until I tried to connect them to everything else. I said, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense at all.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been a big deal for most of my life. And I know, I've had money issues all my life. I think I've told you the story about how, Louise and I, basically our businesses went belly up in 2008, and we were struggling for years. And we're still trying to climb out of that. My wife is 68. I'm 65. We're supposed to be retired, and we can't retire.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people in that position. Now, not many of them did it, running their own business like we did, but there are a lot of people in that same situation.
100%. Yeah.
So it's a big deal to have that kind of confusion about money, because it has real world practical consequences.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And unconscious consequences too, on the way that we view ourselves on the deepest levels.
Oh boy. I can't tell you how often I've thought to myself, even in the midst of doing these programs where I had great guests and I was feeling good about them, there was always that little voice inside that said, I'm not as good as they are. And I know it's not true.
No.
I know absolutely it's not true, but that didn't stop the voice.
Yeah.
That voice just says, you're not as good as they are. You don't make as much as they do. They're much more successful than you are.
Yeah, we're always comparing with things.
Yeah.
And hoping that these things will provide us with, I don't know, peace, joy, love. And I'm not saying that money can't help.
It makes a huge difference. When you don't, you know it when you don't have it.
Yeah. You feel it when you don't have it.
You really know it. Yeah.
And you don't have to wait until you have more of it to feel all of these things too.
That's it. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. We haven't really gotten to the crypto side yet.
Yeah.
And I want to get there. But let's talk a little bit about when you're having conversations with your coaching clients and you're helping them deal with this stuff. How do you help them? I mean, it's going to be different with every person, I know, but give us like, what are some of the guidelines you follow to help people deal with this thing? And then once we've done that, let's talk about crypto and what role, if any, that could play in the process.
Yeah. So when I walk someone through the Fluid Money Blueprint, I walk them through the 3 phases. And the high level of this is understanding how you're seeing the world, because our perception skews everything. You know, we can be sitting next to one another and perceive a scenario, like someone walks up to us and says something, and you could be like, yeah, really great. And I could be like, what? You know, we can have a totally different perception of it because it's what we're looking for, like blinders on a horse. It's what we're looking for, and our experience. We're deciding what the perception is, and creating that reality. So you have to know what you're creating and have tools. So I give my students the tools to figure it out, not only in money, but in all areas of their life. The course is focused on money, but the truth is it's never about money. When it comes to money, it's all of these other things. So you need to understand how you're cutting yourself off at the knees, so to speak, with the way that you're thinking about the world. So a really great example of this is something that you and I have talked about before. You know, you were researching all of this stuff and then feeling defeated and there's nothing I can do and the whole system is screwed, right? Therefore, I am screwed. It's seeing that perception isn't helping you. It's hindering you.
It really is.
Yeah. And that's one perception, but there is other perceptions. Like, obviously that's not an absolute, because not everybody is poor. There's people who are very wealthy within the system. So it's like a game. You're just figuring out how to play a better game than the last version of you. So you need to understand how you're showing up in the game, and, you know, where you take a left turn instead of a right. So just giving you those tools. And I just do it through questions, asking yourself better questions. So in that phase in the program, I give them 18 questions that exhibits a response, so that not only are you seeing with your mind how you're seeing the world, but you're feeling it through your body. It's really important because we're really unaware of what's happening within our own body, and we want to look at the whole picture. So we're going to get a whole bunch of new information based on the way that your body and your brain are responding to these questions. And they're pretty simple. I'll give you one. How do you feel about your financial situation on a scale of 1 to 10, and why? 10 being it's awful, and 1 being I feel at peace.
Okay, so kind of reversing it. Yeah.
Well, it could be
because we normally put 10 as like the happy end, and then 1's the sad end. You kind of turn it around the other way. But that's
it could be either way. I don't even remember what the question is in the actual course, but I can't remember whether 1's good or bad or whatever. But when you start to ask yourselves those introspective questions, you start to see the way that you're seeing the world. And that's really important, because you're detaching from being in it. You're kind of stepping outside of the frame to get a better, 30,000 foot view up of what's going on. And from that 30,000 view perspective, you can get a new perspective. You can get a new perception of the situation. Things look clearer. They look completely different because you're not in that frame, so to speak. So we want to learn how to do that ourselves. So that's what I teach in the phase 1. And all of that stuff with the system comes out, I went into bankruptcy, or I lost my house, or whatever. And these are things that I've been through personally. And that's why I designed the course this way, is because this is actually how I walked myself through it. Seeing that when I did these things, I was telling myself that I was a piece of crap, and that because I utilized this tool of consumer proposal or foreclosure or whatever, I was worthless. And I believed it, because I kept telling myself that over and over again. And I got that feedback from the system as well. I called up one of the banks that, I was paying off at the time, and told her the song and dance I didn't even tell her the song and dance. I just said, I went through a consumer proposal, and she said, did you learn your lesson?
Did she really say that? Wow.
She really said that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
She really said that. Yep. But it was good. It was good in the experience that I was able to step back and say, she doesn't know my heart. She doesn't know me. And this one mistake does not define me. And what if it's not a mistake? What if it was the greatest opportunity I had to learn, and that will change the trajectory of my life, which did. That's what it did, because that's the way that I queued it up to be, instead of being stuck in this, I made a mistake and I'm an awful person and all of this other stuff that we get from society when we make mistakes with money, or we need help with money, or we don't have a lot of money. That's kind of the automatic response that we have to it, is we're horrible people. So it was seeing that I was doing that to myself, and then the world was responding. And an example of that was that lady saying that was the universe giving me what I thought I deserved. So it was seeing that. And then the second phase of the blueprint is shifting those responses and actually shifting the patterns within our brain. And it's really about feeling your feelings and being aware when you're unconsciously doing things, because the way that you spend money right now, and I see this all the time inside of my brokerage system, you'll pay off a car or something like that, and you'll have really good intentions for that money. I'm going to put that money your way. I'm going to pay off debt with it. I'm going to, whatever it might be. You have all of these grandiose ideas of what you're going to do with it, but you never actually take steps towards it. And then fast forward 6 months later, you never made a plan. You never made a decision. You took no action. You had all of these ideas, and now 6 months later, that money is now consumed by something else, because our money wants direction. So it's becoming conscious about the unconscious patterns we have within our life, about the way we respond to things and the way that we're acting within those responses, and then backing them up and consciously choosing the way that we want to live our life. Even it's a trigger for most people to open up their bank accounts. It was for me.
Sure.
And that is affecting your energy. But I think the biggest part of it is step 3 or phase 3, which is all about possibilities, because we get stuck in what is. We have these blinders on. For me to make more money, I've got to get a second job. I've got to work longer hours. I've got to get more clients. And to get more clients, if I'm an entrepreneur, I have to make more calls. I have to sit down with more people. I have to be away from my family more. That's one way. Sure, you could do that. And there's an opportunity for other possibilities to come in. And I think possibilities are like a muscle. It's training your brain to see all of the possibilities that surround you. And there's billions of them. Somebody could call you out of the blue and say, hey, can you help me with this? I'll give you $500. Somebody could give you a lottery ticket for your birthday and you win $5,000 or $10,000 or $1 million. I don't know, whatever. My uncle won $1.5 million on a scratch ticket. It happens.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Like these things happen. But the more you're locked into the way it has to be, or the way that you think it has to be, the more it will be. That's your options. But when you start to exercise this muscle, it's this beautiful experience of opening up to seeing that there's more available to you. And that's when I loop back to currency as well, is that they can print as much as they want. So when it comes to, people not being hungry in this world, like us eradicating hunger, it's not because we don't have the money. It's because we're choosing not to on some front. If I don't have enough money in my life right now, it's not because there isn't more money out there, because there is. I got offered, my husband and I have a market garden business, and this is the way that I operate, always in possibility, right? With everything in my life. So we go to this like market thing where you sit and you sell your stuff, and because I am nice to people, I guess, I don't know. And I don't mind sitting around. I don't know. I got chosen to sit there all day. So I got to meet some really nice people, and it was wonderful and awesome. And then I came home, and the lady who organizes it was talking to Nate, my husband. And she was talking about how they had a person doing like hot dogs and hamburgers or something like that. Just stuff that had already been pre-made. And then they brought it to site in a crock pot, and then they were selling it. And they were making $2,000 a day.
Wow.
And it was a 3-day weekend. So they made $6,000 that weekend.
Yeah.
After all of their expenses. So after all the food and everything like that. And they were they literally boiled hot dogs.
Yeah.
And I thought, look at that. There's another possibility for money right now. Possibilities for money and opportunities for money are all around you. And we need to really exercise that possibility muscle to start seeing them and take advantage of the ones that you like and let go of the ones that you don't, and keep moving forward, because money is I do believe that money, being supported, being provided for, is your birthright, and abundance is everywhere. So you just have to open up to see it.
Well, just is the operative word, I suppose, because I also know, and I think you know also, the flip side of that, which is if you've been through a lot of financial mess,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what kind of mess you're talking about, it doesn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
But some kind of
It
financial
feels
mess,
the same.
yeah. Every
Relative.
time you go through all that, it's programming it into you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy, even when you're aware of the things that you're talking about, it's very easy to fall into a mindset that says publicly, yes, there's all these great opportunities, and privately that says, well, it's not going to work for me. We still defeat ourselves, even with all that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've known that stuff for years, and I kept defeating myself over and over and over again. And I still do to some extent today. If I didn't, I'd be much more successful than I am. But I know I defeat myself. How do I know? I look at my bank book.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than it was 10 years ago, but it's nowhere near where I want it to be.
Right. Yeah.
So I know I'm defeating myself. The hard part is recognizing, first of all, how I'm doing it. And second of all, figuring out how to get turned around so that I can be looking at those perspectives the way you were describing, because the way you're describing sounds wonderful. And yet
it's
I
much
know
better.
perfectly well. Oh, it's much, much better, no doubt. And my conscious mind says, yes, 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 yes. And I also know myself very well that all I have to do is walk away from doing a podcast episode and go look at something going on with the business and get depressed instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly. I just did an entire show on this stuff and I start getting depressed instantly looking at what's going on with the business. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't want to be doing the business anymore. That's not a lot of fun, right? Doing something you really don't want to do.
Yeah.
Feeling trapped by it even at times.
Yeah.
I know something I want to do as an alternative, but I don't have enough time to get the thing going. So I feel frustrated there. And so for me, it becomes, not all the time, but on occasions, it becomes one series of frustrations after another until I feel completely defeated and discouraged.
Yeah. And then you just go down this like poop spiral.
Okay, right down the ground again. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, I remember this place.
And you know what? To be very honest and frank with you, Walt, I'm not immune to it either. Because you understand this stuff doesn't mean that you're perfect and that you feel nothing. And I think that this is really important because we live in a world, our world, the hologram that we live in, whatever you want to call it, this third dimension has contrast. And the really contrast isn't there to like knock you on your knees and kick you while you're down. Like that's not the point of contrast. That's what it feels like.
It certainly feels like it, but no.
Yeah, that's not the point. The point is to learn and to grow and to love parts of you that you wouldn't have been able to without that contrast. So it's important. And a lot of people get stuck in that, like that frustration of like, oh, I can't do this and my life isn't perfect and things aren't better. When really things have changed a whole bunch, and we forget to be have gratitude for that. And we also get stuck in this mindset of it has to look like this for something else. Once this happens, then this will happen, and we get stuck in that loop a lot of times. Until I get there, I won't have this, and that's a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves or that we've been conditioned to go over and over and over and over in our minds. And then it becomes true. Right. But we can have a different perception of that. Just because I don't have the bank account that I want today, or I'm experiencing some contraction right inside of this moment, doesn't mean anything. I can let go of the attachments and say, what's the experience showing me? How can I love myself more? How can I appreciate more things that I'm seeing because of this contraction? And from there, the world gets a whole lot sweeter because it's not you beating yourself up constantly because you went down this path. It's like, it's almost like laughable. You're like, oh, you teacher, you just have like a chuckle about the moronic things that you do because you're like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, but I did it. And it doesn't burden you the way that it used to because you realize that there's no destination. It is the journey and this moment that truly counts. And once you start living life within this moment and getting the most out of it, the juice of life, everything changes.
And that reminds me too, I mean, we are, I'm sure right now, reaching a number of people in the Taya community, David's community, because we were planning to have Matthew on. We're going to have him on next Tuesday because we
Yeah.
got screwed up on the scheduling. But one of the key concepts that anyone who's been through the TIA boot camp or in any of the major programs that TIA has done knows that you have to keep applying the tools. And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing with your students. You go through a program, you learn it, you practice it, you're like, yeah, that really works. And then you don't use it.
Yep.
And it's normal. That's the way, that's just like we're falling back into our old patterns again. That's the norm that we're falling back into. We have to consciously remember, go do the tools again.
Yes.
You did it. Yeah, they worked before. You know they worked before. What are you waiting for? Go do them again. And yet we're so resistant to it. It's
so resistant. We almost use it like a punishment. Oh, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have done that. I don't deserve to use those brilliant tools.
Right.
And it's really unconscious when we do it. I do it with myself too. I'm better, way better than I ever have been at any points in my entire life. And I don't mean like better as in I'm a better, like I was bad and now I'm good. I'm just better at remembering to utilize those tools. It has really become, the tools that I teach have become the way that I live my life. I am constantly in these conversations with myself and other people and just exploring and being in this moment of the journey of wherever that might be.
Yeah. But that's the challenge right there. That's it.
Yeah.
Being willing to be in that journey, and because the journey includes both.
Yes. Well, we live in a world
the downtime, and we do. That's what we live in, right?
Yeah.
So we have to remember, it's okay. We screwed up. Fine. Big deal. Didn't work the way we wanted to. Okay. Big deal. Didn't get the thing we wanted. Okay. Big deal.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it will never come, and I go on different journeys in different topics, and it's really hard for me not to talk about other topics outside of money, because there's so many other things in my life that are teaching me this, the patience and the understanding and really being in that journey and really getting a new perspective. And the biggest one in my life right now is trying to have a kid. That has been, like, quote unquote, not worse, but a bigger lesson for me on all of the stuff that I learned about money. It's like this deepening of all of those lessons of, I can't be happy, or I'm never going to have a family, and comparing myself to others. And there's just so much there that I'm bringing from this money conversation into having a child and that delayed gratification, and that my life is great right here, and it's being in this moment and continuing to be hopeful that will come. The surrender process of having a child is way harder than money for me.
It is. I want to get into the crypto in a moment. I want to put one more thing, because it just came to my mind with what you just said. It reminds me of a line from the Apple TV series Ted Lasso. And there's a particular episode in that series where they have this big match, and the feedback Ted keeps getting, he's the manager of the team, he keeps getting this feedback from all the fan base because he keeps trying to put hope out there. And the feedback he gets is, that's a terrible message, because it's the hope that kills you.
Ooh.
And he does a little thing where he says, I don't like that so much. And he explains why he doesn't like it, and for reasons we wouldn't understand. But I've thought about that phrase myself, and I realized what's so messed up about it. Because it's not the hope that kills you. What kills you is your response when what you hoped for didn't work out. It isn't the hope that killed you, it's the response that killed you.
That's right. And I always think of Garth Brooks' song Unanswered Prayers. And it's so true. That just gave me chills. I thank God for unanswered prayers, because every time that I don't get something that I thought I should get, or that I wanted, or whatever, and I'm feeling that and I'm beating myself up, I remind myself of that. When I look back on my history, every shitty thing I've ever been through, it worked out for the better. It led me to somewhere extraordinarily beautiful and diverse and just amazing, more than I could have ever imagined. And this moment is no different. So I give myself that reality check that something even better is coming on the divine timeline, and I'm provided until that time happens. Like, it's all working out.
And the great news is, even for those of us who are like me, and I totally own up to this, who learn to believe this slowly, really slowly. And by the way, that's how you do 1,800 episodes. But
Yeah.
learning it really, really slowly, one little tiny step at a time. And so resistant every way, giving up a little resistance here, a little there, like, pulling teeth. You got to get rid of this resistance. Well, okay, I'll give you this much. I mean, it's literally like that with me.
Yeah.
But even going through that process, it's a process of evolving to the place that I really want to be in.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me going.
Mhm.
Because I could just stop.
Yeah.
I could just stop and say, this isn't working. This is crazy. This is nuts. This doesn't work. It's a bunch of baloney. I could make that decision anytime I want to. I also know what it's like on that side.
Yeah.
That's why I don't.
Yeah. So you keep going.
It's terrible
Right?
on that side. That's
Yeah.
much worse over there. So it's actually better to keep going along this route. It actually feels better.
Yeah. It feels better.
It does.
That's the whole
It feels
point.
a lot better.
Yeah.
I do want to get into the crypto side, and we've been going for 40 minutes. We haven't actually touched on crypto, so let's.
I know.
Just toward the end here a bit, okay? Because the big promise with cryptocurrency, to give people who aren't really familiar with it the background, cryptocurrency pretty much started with Bitcoin, which was created by a person. I don't remember what his name is, but he's basically unknown. Nobody's ever owned up to being, yes, I'm this person. But he was from Japan, I believe, and he created the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. And what it really is just it's an electronic currency. It is a currency that had a number of goals in mind that the person who created was trying to create. And a lot of people, particularly in libertarian circles, latched onto it because it had a lot of things that they liked a lot, and it kind of grew over time out of that. The general idea of cryptocurrency is that, particularly the Bitcoin cryptocurrency, which is different from these, like tens of thousands of others right now, but that as the original, and about the only one that does this, is that it's limited in size. And this is a big part of economic theory about how monetary systems work, because the big theory is if you have a monetary system that keeps increasing in size, that's what creates inflation. Yes. Okay. And again,
and that's not eventually collapse, right?
And that's part of the theory, right? If you have it go too far, it just kind of falls apart. That's a theory, by the way, that is not subscribed to universally. We talked about earlier how everybody can't even agree on how money works. That's one of the ways they can't agree. But nevertheless, that was the impetus behind Bitcoin. And it led to this idea of a currency that is out in the open, doesn't require a central government or a central bank to manage it. In fact, it can't be managed. That's what the original theory was. It can't be managed by a central authority. And the reason that it works so well is because all the transactions are built in automatically and stay as a permanent record. So there can never be any dispute or debate about what's a legitimate transaction that was conducted. That was the theory behind it. Once it launched, it didn't really go anywhere for a while, and then it slowly started to grow and grow and grow in terms of the people who were big supporters of it, until it got to the point where there was this small nucleus of people who were really getting very, very enthusiastic. And over time, we know what happened over the last 4 or 5 years. It just kind of exploded in price. People were becoming big devotees of it and so forth. And there were a number of arguments being made about, wow, this is going to solve so many of our monetary system problems. And I don't think we really have enough time to go into all those. We'll probably do that with Matthew, and we'll do it with other shows going forward. But that was the general framework. And so the question I want to raise today is, can that really happen? Can a new currency, crypto or otherwise, actually solve the problems we've been talking about here? And that's a tough question to answer.
Yeah.
Because there's so many layers to it.
You know what? I think that there's a lot of issues that if we, in the world in general, outside of even money, that we're facing right now. And if we use the genius of humanity that we have here, we could solve them. And the reason why I'm leaning towards no with this conversation is because it's not just the genius of humanity and so we want, one of the problems with the fiat currency is that you can print into oblivion, and that will create inflation. So our buying power goes down. What $1 is worth today is less than what you could have bought with it 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's astronomical. So that's one problem. So yes, I do think that having something that's fixed that there's only so many of them, creating the same thing as what would be with gold, that resource that's there, whether it's a fictitious resource or just the amount of coupons or whatever that are created. There's only a limited amount of them. But for that to happen, for us to go back to something that is limited, we would have to wrangle our governments into actually budgeting, which I don't know that.
There's a scary concept.
Right? It seems like the politicians just keep kicking the can down the road. Someone else will take care of it. Like someone else will take care of it. And they, I mean, if you were to snap your fingers and go back to the gold standard or put everybody on crypto or whatever, with this idea in mind of, now it's limited, whatever, you'd have to get the politicians on board too.
Sure.
And okay, so you keep following down the line. Okay, if the politicians have a budget, now we have to realistically spend. And what does that mean for social programs and services and things like that? I don't know. We're way more socialist in Canada than the United States. So we have socialist healthcare and different programs and whatever. But by nature, I'm sure there's things that would get cut in the United States too, even being less, more free market. I don't know what the word would be. Democratic society, whatever you want to call it. But there would be things that would be cut, and then that would need to be a conversation. So I don't think it's just simple, yes, it will work, or no, it won't, in my opinion, because there's all of these other factors. We got to get politicians on board. Then we got to get all the people who are going to be, impacted by the politicians cutting their spending. And I do believe that we are very inefficient as a society in a lot of things. I heard the other day there's a jet fuel pipeline that runs right past the airport, the major airport in the capital city of Alberta. And that airport does not use that jet fuel from that pipeline because, I don't know, they get it somewhere else. Like, just what? Like, I just shake my head sometimes. Like, we're killing the genius of people. And if we were to allow people without these rules and the regulations, and I'm not saying that no rule, like, let's not go back to cowboys and, outlaws and, everything like that. I'm not saying that either, but I'm saying that we have a lot of red tape on people, on corporations, things like that takes away their genius and their ability to do better for the world as a whole. So I think it's a way bigger conversation than just, will it work for this? Sure, it could work. And all of these other things will have to fall in line too, if that makes sense.
But I agree with you. This is a huge conversation. It's why we're doing it as a series of segments over time. And we really won't be able to go into it in any depth here because we've spent so much time on the other stuff, which was a great stuff to spend on. I want to throw one thing, because you made reference to red tape. And I wanted to ask you, do you know what the origin of red tape is?
No.
It's a very interesting origin. It comes from Ellis Island in the United States, where the immigrants would come through, because they would arrive, they'd see the Statue of Liberty, they'd have to go through Ellis Island to gain status to join the country and all that kind of stuff. And all their applications, there was somebody who would take their application, they'd ask them questions about their background, what kind of work they did, where they come from, why are they here, all that kind of stuff. And then they would take these things and they would wrap them in red tape. They would tie them up in red tape. That's how they organized them. And the whole thing about red tape was it took forever for that stuff to get processed. It was all tied up in red tape. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? So the action of encouraging and allowing people to come into a country, by the way, that's something that today would be a huge issue because there's so many people in the US against all this immigration, but that's another thing entirely. Just the idea of helping people enter a country was tied up in red tape. Mm-hmm. That to me just says a lot about what's going on with the issue. Because I think what we were talking about earlier is really the key point. What's your mindset about money? What's your mindset about freedom? What's your mindset about where you're going to live? What's your mindset about how you're going to live? The mindset actually drives all of this.
Yes.
The mindset is what controls the whole thing. The money is actually a symptom. The money is actually, it's an energetic form, but it's a symptom of a larger process that goes on.
Yeah, I would agree.
So what I finally, speaking for myself, what I finally learned after all my study about money is that money doesn't solve anything. It can't. Not that there's something wrong with money, not that money is inadequate. It's not designed to solve these problems. It's not there for that. That's
right.
not money's purpose at all.
No.
So what we really need to do is ask ourselves, well, what is the purpose? What does work? What is the function?
Yeah.
Because to me, in my experience, that's one of the ways I'm able to take those little tiny micro steps away from all my dysfunctionality and all my resistance where money is concerned, is by reminding myself money has nothing to do with the solution.
No.
As much as my subconscious mind wants to keep reminding me every day, yes, it does. You don't have enough money right now. I keep reminding myself it really doesn't. And it's like this little tennis match I'm playing with myself, a little ping pong match. On the one hand, I know I don't have as much money as I really want to have. I mean, Louise and I want to travel. We don't have the money for it. No, clearly, I don't have enough money, right? And on the other hand, it's not the money. But it is the money, but it's not the money. But it is the money, but it's not the money. But it is that's the tennis match.
Yes. Yes.
And that's really what's at the root of this conversation, I think. I think it's one of the reasons what makes the whole topic of crypto so interesting.
Yeah. Well, and
that conversation, that tennis match is what it's really all
yes. About. Well, and you could look at it another perspective. But what that really downloaded for me over the last couple of years, that it's not about the money, like on a world perspective, because I've asked these questions before, like, why haven't we cured world hunger? Like, you know, disease, like all of these things. And then you see governments printing a lot of money. Enough money. There was a statistic, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but they said, you know, X number of dollars, it was billions of dollars or maybe $1 trillion or something. Yeah, would cure world hunger around the world. Like nobody would ever be hungry again. And then on the other side of things, we see the government's printing that and much, much, much more in response to what's been going on. And it's not about the money. Because if we had the ability to just print it to feed everybody that was hungry, then why didn't we do it? Because it's not about the money.
And nor is it about the food.
Nor is it about the food.
And it's not about the other stuff that we make. There's actually plenty of it. We actually manufacture and grow and everything, all the stuff that we need, but we can't get it into everybody's hands.
That's right.
We step on our own toes as we're trying to do it. Like, why do we do that?
Exactly. Well, with the red tape. Yeah.
The red tape. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, a part of it, a part of me believes it's not about the environment either. Like
it really isn't.
If it really was about these things and we cared about them fundamentally, like we wanted to solve the issue, then we would do things differently. We would have less red tape when it came to that. We'd have people stepping into their genius. Like we were talking about, I don't remember if it was in this episode or when we were talking after, we were talking about the hydrogen machine.
Oh, right? Yeah, right.
And there's not a lot of research on the effects and how beautiful it could be and, you know, transformative for society and the healthcare industry and all of these things. And the first thing I think of when you told me that there isn't that much research is, oh, how much money was in it? You know, if it's going to make a lot of money, there's going to be a lot of research. But if it's going to be something that's free, or is something that doesn't cost the average, an ordinary individual a lot of money to produce or to figure out or whatever, they're not going to do a whole lot of research. This is just the perception that I've seen, or that's the perception that I have right now of what's going on. Like it's just kind of odd in that way.
Yeah. Well, it's true because, I mean, in the medical industry, the only thing that gets money is something that's patentable. You can't patent hydrogen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's not going to be a lot of money going there.
Right. So, I mean, why would the whole pharmaceutical industry want something that's going to cost, like, okay, you bought a machine for $2,000 and you're going to let your whole community use it, like your whole neighborhood. So that's, you know, I don't know, 1,000 people. I don't know how many people live around you, but, you know, all of those people, maybe you're generous and you're like, hey, you know, like just provide me with something and, you know, in exchange, and you can use my little handy dandy machine and clean yourself up. They don't want that.
Well, it's even worse than that. They're afraid that somebody else is going to be able to make the same machine. They want the patent so that they can be the only one who can make it.
Yes. Right. So, I mean, there is some greed that's involved there, and this this notion that we don't have enough resources, and that comes right back to money. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough resources. And I'm going to loop right back to your conversation, the ping pong that you're having in your head. I want to travel, but I can't travel. I want to travel, but I can't travel. And I would say when you stand firmly in the middle of that ping pong ball, you catch the ball and you say, is that absolutely true that I need more money to travel? Yeah, is there another way? Right? Yeah. I saw a TikTok the other day and it was like, you could eat candy and make $100,000 from home. I almost clicked on it. I love candy. And I was like, interesting. Like the possibilities are out there. There's people who are traveling and getting paid for it because they take a picture or they do a blog or they do their podcast from there. There's more than one way to achieve the result. And when we say, I don't have enough money, therefore I can't do, it's a lie that we continue to replicate within our own system and then our belief system and continue to see and believe everywhere we go. But when we start to question it, is that absolute? Do I absolutely need money for this? Maybe parts of this, but maybe there's another way.
And ultimately, the purpose in asking that question is to let go of the idea that there isn't enough of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have Matthew today. We'll have him next Tuesday, but this has been well worthwhile. So thank you once again for spending the time with me to talk about this. Very important.
This is fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm excited to hang out with Matthew and like talk more about the crypto side of things. And you know, because I do think that we can change the world and we can change the way that everything works if we're just focusing on that solution and what we want to see. And I think now more than ever, we really do need to focus on what we want to see in the world and start taking steps towards those things, even tiny steps like you were talking about, Walt, you know, just little breadcrumbs, you know, doing your part.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah,
really,
it doesn't
really
matter.
Small.
It doesn't matter how small, but we cast that vision of this is what we want for our world. And I think with everything that's going on and being in this conversation where there's so many things that don't make sense or feel, you know, dark or corrupted or whatever, instead of going down the negative spiral of everything is screwed and there's no hope, standing in that place of hope that our vision matters and our ability to focus on what we want to see, that's what creates change and that's what creates the world that we eventually live in. So let's make a good one.
I love that. What a wonderful way to wrap it up. Thank you, Jody. You just tied it all together beautifully, and you did it without red tape. Congratulations. So thank you very much. Thank you, podcast listeners. We'll see you all next time, both on LOA Today and the Crypto Skeptic.